It was supposed to be just another Monday morning. The cold breeze outside hadn't even cleared the city streets yet when Maya stepped out of her car. The tall glass building loomed above her like a silent judge, its polished surface reflecting the gray clouds rolling in. She adjusted the collar of her coat and looked down at the worn strap of her handbag, faded, stitched in a few places by her own hands. It wasn't designer, it wasn't new, but it had carried her resume, her hopes, her rejection letters, and now the final contract of a deal worth $300 million. She took a deep breath, pushed open the heavy glass doors, and walked into the lobby. Maya was a black single mother from Atlanta. She had never asked for pity, never leaned on anyone's shoulder, longer than needed. Life had thrown punches since she was 17, when her mother died and left her alone with her baby brother Marcus and her 1-year-old son Elijah. Since then, every step Maya took had been uphill. She worked 2 jobs while studying nights. She'd changed Elijah's diapers in school bathrooms. She'd gone hungry so he wouldn't have to. And now, after years of sacrifice, she'd built something, not just for herself, but for other women like her. Her tech company wasn't flashy, but it worked. It solved real problems for government systems, and her platform was already being tested in 3 states. Today, she was here to seal the biggest deal of her life, but the boardroom had different plans. From the moment she walked in, the stares were sharp. The voices dropped to murmurs. One man, tall, bald, with a heavy watch that probably cost more than Maya's car, nudged the man beside him and smirked. "Guess someone's here to take notes," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear. Maya paused, her hand tightening around her folder. She smiled politely, nodding once, and sat down at the far end of the table. She laid the folder in front of her, opened to the signed preliminary documents. The company executives across from her barely looked at it. Instead, the room buzzed, with side comments. Did she even build this thing herself? She's just the face, probably some diversity stunt. Hope she's not expecting to lead implementation. We'll need a real engineer on that. Maya sat still. Her face didn't twitch. She'd heard worse, much worse, but today wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about finishing what she started. Still, something shifted inside her, a cold steel she hadn't felt in a long. To one of the men, Douglas Reed leaned forward. He was head of the firm overseeing the government partnership. "Miss Johnson," he said, stretching the name with a tone that barely hid his irritation. "We've gone over your proposal. It's cute, but I don't think the Department of Energy is going to risk a $300 million rollout on a company that doesn't have, let's say, more seasoned leadership." Another chuckled. "Maybe you could bring in someone from Google. To run point, yeah, a name people trust." Maya's jaw clenched. She closed the folder slowly and looked up. "Gentlemen," she said, calm but firm, "you've already signed the pre-agreement. I was invited here to finalize timelines, not justify my existence." The silence was thick for a moment. Then Douglas laughed. "You've got fire, I'll give you that. But this isn't a charity project. The government doesn't cut checks for sob stories." She nodded once. "Good, because I didn't bring one." That moment should have ended the discussion. But instead, someone made a joke about Maya probably being on food stamps a few years ago. Another joked about her nails, short and unpainted, saying she must not know what a manicure was. Then came the worst. "You got this far with that face. Must have known how to smile in the right rooms." The room laughed, but not Maya. She gathered her folder, stood slowly, and looked each of them in the eye. "You know what's interesting?" she said. "None of you asked a single question about the technology. Not one question about system security, user data integration, or the 2 million lines of code my team wrote over 3 years. But you've asked a lot about me, my looks, my background, my worth. So let me answer your real question. Yes, I built this every inch, and no, you won't be getting any of it." Confused, Douglas leaned back. "Excuse me?" "I'm terminating the agreement," she said, sliding a second folder across the table. "Per Section 9B, I can withdraw before final signature if your firm demonstrates a conflict of ethical interest or engages in discriminatory conduct." "You're joking." No, you're just not used to women like me walking away. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. It was Elijah. She smiled softly, answering as she walked out of the boardroom and into the hallway. Hey baby, you okay? Yeah, he said, his voice small. I just gave my seat to a pregnant lady on the bus. She looked tired. She stopped walking. Her heart swelled with quiet pride. That's my boy, she said. She gave me a note, he added. She said it was important. Maya smiled. What does it say? Elijah paused. I don't know. I haven't opened it yet. Should I wait for you? And just like that, the hallway spun a little slower. The laughter from the boardroom grew faint behind her. Maya had just walked away from $300 million. But as she held the phone to her ear, something told her the real story was just beginning. Because the woman Elijah gave his seat to, she wasn't just anyone. And the note in his hand, it was going to change everything. Maya stepped into the elevator, the doors closing silently behind her. Her reflection stared back at her from the shiny steel walls, calm, composed, unreadable. But inside her heart was pounding. She had just walked away from a deal most people would have done anything to keep. 3 years of work, thousands of sleepless nights, and a future that seemed so certain only minutes ago, all hanging by a thread. But what haunted her more wasn't the boardroom or the cold faces around that table. It was Elijah's voice in her ear, soft and proud, telling her about a kind act that somehow felt bigger than it should. She gripped her phone tighter, her mind racing. Elijah wasn't the type to exaggerate. He was 12, thoughtful, always watching, always thinking. If he said the woman gave him a note and said it was important, then it was. As the elevator descended, she thought back to the morning. How rushed they had been. She remembered tying Elijah's shoes at the kitchen table while checking last-minute revisions on her presentation. She'd handed him breakfast in a paper napkin, kissed his forehead, and reminded him not to forget his science fair model. He had smiled at her, proud of the tiny working volcano he had built. He didn't care that the mountain was shaped funny or that the glue dried lumpy. He was just excited to show it. She promised she'd try to be there by the end of the school day. But now, after what had happened, she wasn't sure where to go next. As she stepped out onto the sidewalk, the wind had picked up. She pulled her coat tighter and walked quickly toward her car. The sky was turning darker now, thick clouds rolling overhead, like the city was preparing for something it couldn't name. Back in her car, she sat for a moment in silence. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Elijah. Picture message, a folded note. Front reads, "Please give this to your mother. This is no accident." Maya's breath caught. She tapped to open the photo wider. The handwriting was neat, almost formal. The kind that belonged to someone educated, maybe used to signing checks or writing letters on stationery. But what really made her pause were the last 4 words. This is no accident. No accident? What could that mean? She called Elijah again. He picked up right away. Hey, Mom, he said. Elijah. That woman on the bus. What did she look like? There was a pause on the other end. She could hear the noise of other kids. Around him, maybe at school or still on the bus. She was white, he said. Older than you. Kinda tired looking. She had on this really fancy coat, but she walked like she was hurting. Like her back or something. Maya nodded slowly. Did she say anything else? She said thank you a bunch of times, he answered. Then she sat down, reached into her bag and gave me the note. She looked me in the eyes and said, make sure your mother sees this. It's important. Then she smiled a little, but her eyes looked sad. Maya felt something strange stir in her chest. Did she get off at your stop? No, he said. She got off at Peachtree and 14th. Maya's hands tightened around the steering wheel. That intersection was downtown, close to some government. Buildings, maybe even a federal office. But what would a pregnant woman in pain be doing there, and why would she be interested in her? She hung up with Elijah and sat in silence again. Her mind flipped through possibilities. She had no enemies, at least none she knew by name. Sure, people disliked her, maybe even resented her for rising so far when they assumed she wouldn't. But that came with the territory. What didn't make sense was the deliberate wording of that note. This is no accident. Her instincts had carried her this far. As a single mother, you learn to read between the lines, to listen to what people aren't saying. Something about this woman, this moment, was not random. And suddenly she remembered something. Last week at a Department of Energy meeting, one of the secretaries had accidentally dropped a document while passing through the hallway. Maya had seen it slide across the floor and picked it up before the woman could. It was stamped classified. The woman's face had gone pale. Maya had smiled, handed it back and said, "Don't worry, I didn't peek." It was a harmless moment, or so she thought. Back in the present, Maya decided to drive to Elijah's school early. She needed to see that note in person. The drive passed in a blur. Her eyes scanned every corner, every street lamp, every shadow that passed. She wasn't the type to be paranoid, but something didn't feel right. It wasn't just about a bad meeting or a broken deal. It felt like someone was watching her, or waiting for her. By the time she got to the school, Elijah was already sitting on the front steps with his science project next to him. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "You're early," he grinned. Maya got out, knelt beside him and cupped his face in her hands. "You okay?" she asked gently. He nodded. "I just want to show you the note." He pulled it from his backpack. It was neatly folded, edges sharp. She unfolded it carefully. Inside, the handwriting was the same as the front. It read, "You don't know me, but I know who you are. I've followed your work. You're stronger than they think. There are people who want you silenced, not because of your mistakes, but because of your brilliance. The meeting today was staged. They never intended to sign anything. Walk away. Now, this is bigger than tech. A friend." Maya felt like the wind had been knocked from her chest. She read it twice, then a third time. Elijah leaned closer. "What does it mean?" "I don't know yet," she said softly. But her eyes didn't leave the page. She wanted to believe it was nonsense, some elaborate prank or coincidence. But too many things weren't adding up. The smirks in the boardroom, the way Douglas had acted like he knew more than he was saying. The fact that she had been asked to submit her platform's back-end code weeks ago, and now they were walking away like they'd never needed her in the first place. It hit her like a punch. They'd already taken it. They'd reviewed the code, seen how it worked, and now they didn't need her. And worse, they probably intended to hand it off to someone else. Someone easier to control. Someone they could call qualified. But the woman on the bus knew. She was trying to warn her. Maya looked down at Elijah, his face still bright, still innocent. She folded the note and slipped it into her coat pocket. "Come on, baby," she said. "Let's get home." But as they walked to the car, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. That somewhere, someone was waiting to see what she'd do next. And she wasn't sure whether to run, or fight, or